Welcome. I'm so glad you're able to listen in on session 3 of Women, Marriage, and Sex. This is the third discussion in a 3-part series. All 3 videos and accompanying worksheets can be found on my website, amywildmanwhite.com. Throughout our time together, I will be stopping and referring you to a worksheet for a moment of self-reflection. Go to the tab on Women, Sex, and Marriage and choose the worksheet for session 3. I will let you know when to pause the video and complete the section of the worksheet as instructed. You may prefer to listen to the entire video first and then go through the handout on your own afterward. The worksheet is intended to help you gain additional insight into where you are in your journey and identify steps for growth. In our first 2 sessions, we laid the foundation for being able to know, embrace, and express our sexual selves. We also identified barriers that can get in the way. Today, we're going to focus on creating a healthy context for the expression of our sexuality and then practical steps for getting there. Let's start by considering what one woman said makes up her list of what's important to her when making love with her husband. Sexual intercourse is almost at the bottom of my list. Number 1 is talking, 2 is holding, 3 is sharing, and finally, sexual love. When we engage in sharing affectionate words and touch with our partner, we are creating a climate that stirs our desire for giving and receiving of our whole selves, including our sexual self. Can you think of a time when you and your husband held hands, hugged one another, held one another, or shared your thoughts and feelings on a deeply personal level? My guess is remembering these times is especially meaningful. The following categories are non-negotiables for creating the ideal context for sexual expression. First is friendship, enjoying the relationship and time together, and there has to be commitment. This provides safety and knowing there is permanence. Trust makes it possible for us to be vulnerable, and then intimacy. Not sexual intimacy, but that idea of knowing each other creates desire for one another. Without these qualities, over time, a woman may find it difficult to respond sexually. She may be able to go through the physical motions, but feel emotionally detached from the experience, almost as if she's prostituting herself. Believe me, this doesn't feel good for her or her husband. Well, let's define a little more about what we mean by intimacy. It is that sense of knowing and being known on a deeply personal level. Think of the word intimacy, into me see, an awareness of self and the other person through talking together or experiencing an activity or social event together. Women tend to pursue intimacy through dialogue. We do lunch and we talk. Men through doing. They go hunting, fishing, or play golf. The truth is, we need both the dialogue and the doing to really know one another and achieve a high level of intimacy. Out of that, friendship, trust, and commitment, we create the perfect climate for sexual intimacy and open the emotional door, which is what causes a woman's body to physically respond. So creating this climate is the first step toward having good sex. Please go to your worksheet and respond to each item under number 1. Well, we also want to be informed about how our bodies work, starting with knowing our anatomy and then our sexual response cycle. While we may all have the same parts, how we experience our body is unique to each of us. The female sexual organs include the vulva, which is the opening of the vagina, and the outer and inner lips, plus the clitoris. The clitoris is mostly hidden and extends inside your body, back and down on both sides of the vagina. It becomes swollen when you're aroused, and its only purpose is pleasure. When arousal takes place, we'll talk more about this later, the blood vessels become engorged, the muscles contract in a rhythmic fashion, and that's when orgasm occurs. This suggests that God made our bodies to enjoy sex. God created our bodies for pleasure. If you've been told anything else, it's not true. Now, how we pursue that pleasure will determine if we have a sexual experience that is more like dining at McDonald's or Ruth Chris Steakhouse. Please go to your worksheet and respond to each item under number 2. So our bodies are made for sexual pleasure, but we have to prepare them to respond. This preparation includes our libido or sex drive and the arousal process. Here's what one woman says. I enjoy sex once we're 10 to 15 minutes into foreplay, and I say to myself, wow, we should do this more often. But during the week, I hardly ever think about it. Sometimes when my husband suggests it, I think, no, not that. I think I'm just too tired and I want to be left alone. I have a 2.5-year-old and an 11-month-old who is nursing, so sometimes it's hard for me to feel like anything but a mother. I wish I felt more sexual than I do because I enjoy the closeness it brings. What can I do to feel more sexual? Good question. Well, according to the research, 19.2% of women have higher libidos or sex drive than their partner. 22.3% have equal to their husbands, but 41.5% of women have a lower sex drive or lower libido than their husbands. There are 2 different types of sex drives. 30% of women have what we call a spontaneous libido. This is a sexual need that is strong to begin with, and if her desire is not met, there's frustration. But 70% of women have a responsive libido. This means the sex drive intensifies when emotional connection and physical closeness occur. This is when she begins to become aroused. So think about what that means. For 70% of women, when they first get into bed and start the sexual romantic experience, there's little to no arousal. That builds as the closeness goes on. Well, the body is getting ready for the full expression of our sexual selves through intercourse as we get aroused. The process of emotional connection and physical touch is what makes intercourse pleasurable. Here is what one woman says. My husband doesn't really get that sex itself doesn't do much for me. I need a lot of warming up. He seems to think that there's something wrong with me. Like, why should we have to spend so much time on this other stuff instead of sex? Well, how does arousal work? Physical touch is powerful and part of the arousal process, and it's not surprising. Here's a little bit about the impact of physical touch on us human beings. From the time we are born and throughout our lifespan, we respond to physical touch. Did you know skin contact with newborns within the first hour after birth regulates temperature, heart rate, breathing, and decreases crying? The human brain actually quiets under stress when a hand is held. Physical touch causes the release of endorphins, which are the feel-good chemicals, reducing stress, anxiety, and depression. The body also releases oxytocin when there's physical touch, and this is the bonding hormone, which actually increases trust. We're made to respond to loving touch in so many ways. Have you been able to give and receive the physical touch you need and enjoy? If not, get to know what type of touch you prefer and what arouses you. You and your partner may be uneasy, self-conscious, or even embarrassed at the beginning of this process, but don't let that hold you back. Start slowly and proceed at your own pace. Learning what each of you prefers and enjoys will greatly enhance your sex life, but communicate lovingly and gently. This is a learning opportunity for you both, and nobody wants to feel like it's a test. No report card. If something doesn't feel good, gently communicate that to one another. You may not do everything perfectly the first time or so, but that's okay. Arousal increases with foreplay. That's that physical touch we were just talking about and words of affection. Typically, 15 to 20 minutes of foreplay is necessary for arousal to begin. As arousal occurs, a woman's body is preparing for orgasm. Bypassing foreplay and the arousal stage can be counterproductive. Jumping immediately into clitoral stimulation before arousal can set things back because a woman may begin to feel anxious or detached when this happens. Take as much time as needed to get there and learn to enjoy the journey, not just the destination. Here's some tips. Be intentional and think about sex more frequently. In advance, anticipate desire and arousal. In a sense, prime the pump. Many couples find they need to schedule sex. Get over the idea that sex should always be spontaneous. That's only in Hollywood. Again, don't hurry lovemaking. Allow ample time to reach the arousal level needed. And as you plan and anticipate time together, get rested so you will have enough energy to express yourself. During lovemaking, be fully present. This isn't the time to think about your grocery list or tomorrow's meeting. Stay focused, tune into your body, and allow yourself to experience the pleasurable feelings you are having. Be aware of the use of alcohol. Alcohol initially lowers inhibitions, but moderate amounts may cause fewer or no orgasms, less lubrication, and the need for longer foreplay. Don't underestimate the value of keeping balance in your life. If you're burning the candle at both ends or trying to make everyone happy, and perhaps not taking care of yourself, chances are you will see the negative impact of these patterns in your sex life. On the other hand, good nutrition, regular exercise, me time to take care of self, time for recreative experiences, and fulfilling relationships and spiritual expression will most likely contribute toward a positive sex life. Remember, our sex life is only one part of who we are. We want to be an integrated self, and all these steps work toward that. Well, as we age, we also may want to regularly engage in pelvic floor exercises. We mentioned this in session 2, but this maintains strong vaginal muscles and helps prevent urinary incontinence. About 50% of women experience some incontinence after having babies. Refer to the book, From Duty to Delight, for more information on pages 105 to 109. The information is found on your worksheet under the resource section. Please go to your worksheet and respond to each item under number 3. A question that frequently comes up is, how often should we have sex? What is normal? What's normal is what's fulfilling for you and your partner. Avoid comparisons. On average, the majority of couples have sex 1 to 3 times a week, but up to 1/3 of couples have sex once a month. When it comes to thinking about having sex, research does show that men tend to think about sex more than women, but that might be different for some couples. We're all different. Accepting these differences as normal avoids comparisons and potential feelings of inadequacy. When a couple has different levels of desire, the one with the lower desire may feel anxious about doing anything that could be interpreted as wanting to have sex. This occurs out of a fear they will create an expectation they're not ready to meet. They may then pull back from initiating any kind of touch, and this can create a lot of tension in the relationship. An effective approach to counter this dynamic is to engage in regular non-sexual touch, allowing the couple to experience the pleasure of physical touch without pressure or expectations. A woman will most likely then begin to relax and actually become aroused. Please go to your worksheet and respond to each item under number 4. When these initial areas of focus are established, orgasm is more likely to occur. You may have questions and even misinformation about orgasms. Here is what one woman said. I really don't know what orgasm is for a woman. I've experienced joy, exhilaration, great happiness, but if orgasm for a woman is supposed to replicate a man's release, then I've never experienced it. After 40 plus years, I'm still uneducated in this area. An orgasm is an involuntary response to a series of physiological changes in the body. Lubrication, increased heart rate, the uterus actually lifts, the inner 2/3 and outer layer of the vagina expand, the vaginal opening decreases to about 1/3 the size, the clitoris and surrounding tissues fill with blood and increase in size, much like a man's penis does, but it's internal. Research suggests about half of married women reach orgasm most or all of the time. A small percent rarely or never reach orgasm, but many women have difficulty with orgasm at one time or another. Men do tend to have orgasms more than women, which in part is due to how men and women differ in achieving orgasm. Over 90% of men almost always achieve orgasm due to direct stimulation during intercourse, which is not true for many women. A man will need to control the timing of his orgasm to facilitate his wife having enough time to reach the arousal level first through effective stimulation. How a woman reaches orgasm may vary from woman to woman. About half of all women do not experience orgasm through intercourse alone. A couple may need to experiment with different types of touch, positions, and oral stimulation to learn how both can best reach orgasm. By the way, unlike the picture that romance novels and Hollywood create, simultaneous orgasms are not typical. Also, women are more capable of having multiple orgasms as they do not need the wait time called the refractory period that men do. Reaching an orgasm certainly is enjoyable, but it's not always the goal of lovemaking. Expressing the elements of friendship, trust, commitment, and intimacy through sexual expression is fulfilling and rewarding all by itself. Reaching an orgasm, especially for women, is sometimes a bonus, the icing on the cake. Understanding this difference between men and women can keep the couple from feeling undue pressure to perform and make sure the woman has an orgasm every time they make love. Please go to your worksheet and respond to each item under number 5. In summary, a fulfilling sex life brings joy and is a result of significant effort. Sexual health starts with knowing, loving, and embracing yourself. Negative messages and experiences create barriers. We want to work toward removing the barriers and embracing the truth about sex and our sexuality. Partnership, friendship, trust, and intimacy lay the foundation for a healthy and fulfilling sex life in marriage. Our pleasure matters and is as important as our partners. We always get a vote as to how, when, and where we share ourselves with our partners. Getting there is a process. Start where you are and go at your own pace. You're in charge. Consider doing additional reading and research, as well as engaging a professional counselor if more help is needed. Please go to your worksheet and respond to each item under number 6. Just a word on sexual responsibility. Sex is never to be used as a reward for good behavior. Cutting a spouse off as punishment or giving sex to get something is self-serving and will negatively impact the relationship and your sex life. Expressing one's sexual self with one's partner is a gift to one another, not an obligation or duty, and coercion is never to be part of the equation. I would encourage you to avoid reading books that present a picture of a woman being responsible for her husband's sexual behavior or being obligated to meet his needs and sacrifice her own. There are quite a few of them out there. The book, The Great Sex Rescue, which is listed in your resources on your worksheet, identifies some of them. Be especially wary if there is a message that a woman does not have a choice or a right to say no. On your handout is a list of other resources you might find helpful as well. Well, thank you so much for being willing to take this step in your journey. I hope that this has been helpful, and I wish you the very best. God bless.